y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to a video that was just a little bit painful to film because y'all know when it comes to paring things down in my collection to creating it into just like this little bitty capsule thing, I have a very hard time because I love variety and a lot of things in my collection I love. But today we're going to be discussing the if I had to keep only 10 eyeshadow palettes. Now, the funny thing is to a normal person, 10 eyeshadow palettes is like a huge amount. Someone like me who spends way too much money and way too much time with my makeup, 10 is like scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit here. But I have gone through and I have narrowed it down. I do believe that I have done my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes before. I will leave that down below. But as more eyeshadow and makeup is released, as we try new things, our opinions may, shift and change. For example, back in the day were I doing this, Kat Von D, Urban Decay, and Too Faced would be on this list. Spoiler alert, they're not. And while some things stay the same, more often than not, they do actually change. There are going to be some palettes in here that I've been talking about for years. And some palettes that are relatively newer to my collection, but are just so stand out that if it were a fire happening all up here and I had to pick 10, this is what I would pick. Now, I will say with the caveat, usually when there is this, there are two palettes that I could not narrow down to one or the other. They are by the same brand. They're essentially the same thing. They're just different colorways. So for me, it's sort of like I'll explain when I get to it. But let's just get on into it and get in a little bit of positivity, because my channel's been, I feel like ever since going on my low buy, my channel's been a little extra salty with them anti-hauls and them talking about makeup nobody asked for. We're gonna start with one of the most obvious ones. Y'all probably saw this coming, but the Jeffree Cosmetics Blood Sugar palette. Even amidst all of his other palettes that he has released that I love, Jawbreaker, Blue Blood, as whatever as it is, Bloodlust, Conspiracy, this one is the one that I love. This is the one that I recommend. This is the one that I reach for. This is the one that if Mr. Star ever decided to discontinue, I would probably be picketing at his meet and greets in demand for this to be brought back, because to discontinue this would be to basically kill me. Y'all know I love warm tone neutrals. I love pink. I love purple. I love red, and this is so wonderful. The formula, the color theory, the layout. The only shade in here I don't necessarily like is the matte white. I'm sick and tired of those being included in whatever to be all like, oh, well, we use it to blend out harsher colors. Stop trying to make makeup artistry, whatever thing, a mainstream thing. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful, unparalleled matte formulas. I love the shimmers. I love the matte to shimmer ratio. I love the packaging. Besides that white one, there is not a shade in this palette that I do not use and that I do not absolutely love. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times these two reds right here, used and abused. I absolutely love this shade here, Candy Floss, as an inner corner highlight. She be poppin'. Sugarcane, Cake Mix, even Ouch, Intravenous. I look at this palette and it gives me feels. Then next, a palette that makes me all sorts of happy inside, that has just, but one that ever since getting has it makes me so happy. I must admit, I purchased this for the Disney princess aficionado, the collector, the aesthetic, the beauty. I did think the color story, I will leave, for any of these palettes that I have reviews on, I will leave those linked down below if y'all want to get a little throwback. But I thought the color story was beautiful. Obviously, I was very drawn to the greens and the purple and even the pops of blue and the kind of mustardy neutrals. But color story and aesthetic aside, Besame has a pretty fan-tucking fastic eyeshadow formula. I mean, you know, it's expensive, and you figure it's expensive because, like, you got all this intricate whatever packaging, but that formula is one of the most beautiful, smooth, pigmented, blendable eyeshadow formulas I have ever used, probably in my top 5. I just absolutely love this palette. I feel like if this is the same formula that they've used for all their other eyeshadow palettes, it is hideously underrated and something that a lot of people, especially a lot of the bigger beauty gurus, are totally sleeping on. Sleeping Beauty. I'm funny. But if I had to run out and grab one of these that I would, if I did not have this in my life, I would be very, very sad. Next up isn't necessarily an eyeshadow palette so much as it is an eyeshadow bundle. Sydney Grace, one of y'all, actually sent this to me and I just about lost my mind. It is still available on the site, this particular bundle, which is, I'm including it because, you know, it's a, I mean, it makes up a palette, but this is the, I believe it's the Danny bundle. Y'all know if there is something that I absolutely love, it is green eyeshadows, and this is one of the absolutely best green eyeshadow palettes. The quality of these are just breathtakingly sublime. I love the matte to shimmer ratio. You've got these 3 shimmers here and this beautiful level of gradation. You've also got a bunch of different tones. You've got like the khaki, the melon, you know, it's just such a beautifully curated collection of greens, and that then included with the fan tucking fast stick formula. I mean, this is just bomb diggity. If I were not on a low buy this year, I would have already purchased a whole bunch more of Sydney Grace singles, because kind of like the Besame, I feel like this is a super underrated formula, and this is one of my most reached for green whatevers. If you are looking for a really nice green palette or just green shadows in general, highly recommend this. Then if we're going on that green front, obviously I have to talk about the Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette, though it's more than just green. I mean, what made it very unique was the fact that they did have these kind of deeper olivey green tones, and then with the beautiful warm tones, the way that the palette's formatted, you know, going this way, they play well on their own on each section. They play fantastically together. This is another one of my most reached for palettes, either for this color story or that color story, or just using them together. This formula for the matte and shimmer formula with this palette and what they did with these shades from Melt Cosmetics is amazing, and I wish they could take this consistency and put it through the rest of their releases. I cannot praise this enough. It is on the pricier side, though not the priciest in this video. We'll get to that in a minute and y'all probably know what it is. I will say that the mattes are pretty powdery. Melt Cosmetics has kind of like a on par with Kat Von D and Lorac level of powderiness, but I always just kind of take it and just gently tap my brush and I am good to go. I love this palette so much. This is all these palettes that I've included are ones that I look at and I know exactly what I want to do. I get inspired. I can do different things with it. I can go on like my fallback kind of look, or I can maybe push myself a little whatever someday. But all of these, just like I said, they all just bring me, in the words of Marie Kondo, this whole video, everything in this video brings me joy. Then if we're talking about bringing joy, this is the most expensive inclusion in this video, and this is probably one of the most expensive items that I have ever really been like, it is worth every single blinking penny, because I do not like needlessly recommending expensive things, because makeup is expensive, it's a luxury item, you know, and not everyone has the same budget. But the Viseart Grand Pro Volume 3. actually what I am wearing on my peepers today. We went a little dark, a little vampy, a little, I don't know, witchy. But this is what she looks like here. Absolutely gorgeous. I love the matte to shimmer ratio on this because this palette is all matte. But when I say, believe me when I tell you that the quality, the pigmentation, the blendability, the beauty of these shades is basically one of the closest things to perfection that I have ever used. Like, I've tried their other palettes, I have their dark mattes and their other ones, but there is something about this formula that is just so close to magical. I mean, there is not a shade in here that I do not use and do not love. This palette gets me I look at it and I'm like, oh, you just F me up with all that color. I love this. It's beautiful. It is gorgeous. I do not look at this palette and do not get any kind of excited and just inspired and all. If you are wanting to not have a lot of makeup and invest, this is one of the colorful palettes to invest in. As a color lover, as a matte lover, it exceeded all of my expectations because I was so ready to be like, this is totally not worth it. These brands are out here BSing us to no whatever. But this is just absolutely sublime. I love it. If they come out with more all matte versions of this in different color stories, I'm gonna be hard pressed not to buy that shiz and review it for y'all. Okay, let's get into the first one of the two basically the same thing but two different color stories. Y'all have probably saw this coming. Y'all know your girl loves the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance. But you also know that your girl loves the Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam. I feel like these two palettes, as much as I love negativity, all this talking about these eyeshadow palettes just gets me pumping. Obviously, if they're on this list, these two palettes are two of my absolute end-all be-all palettes. If you are someone who is looking for perfect staple makeup, something that you can wear every day, something that you can go a little bit interesting, a little bit out of your comfort zone, and then something that you can really glam up, these are absolute perfection. Two of the best palettes, in my opinion, on the market. These exceed any Lorac Pro palettes, any Urban Decay Naked palettes, any Too Faced chocolate bars. If you're wanting staple, everyday makeup, all day whatever palettes, get you these. I do also believe that the Soft Glam is the unintentional actual companion sister palette to the Modern Renaissance, not the Subculture, because while they work phenomenally on their own, they play beyond beautifully with each other. I know I'm cheating. I understand I'm cheating. You can be all whatever down in the comments below, but I just can't separate these palettes. They are neck and neck. I love them both equally. Like, it's not like, oh, this one's a, bit above. No, they're on the exact same point scale. And they're just so good, so beautiful. The shimmer formula, the matte formula, the colors, there is a little bit of overlap, but I love these so much. Cannot recommend them enough, especially if you are looking for just something to be good staple makeup. Because not everybody out here living the green life or the red life or the pink life or the purple or the blue, whatever. We've got to have the people who use all the whatevers in our mind too. But we might as well talk about another red tone palette, because if there's something I love just as much as green, it's pinky red tones. Lime Crime, believe it or not, but the Venus XL. I mean, when this came out and they showcased this, I was like, girl. Take that original Venus aesthetic and blow that shiz up and just Passion, Flora, Triumph, Botticelli, Goddess, Ethereal, you know, everything except for this shade, which is aptly entitled Blank Canvas. There's not a shade in here that I don't use and I don't love. This is definitely one of my go-to red tones, warm, or if I want to go very vampy and neutral. I would say if you were gonna get a palette from Lime Crime, it should be this one, because the quality of these shades are just so nice and good. You get a nice amount of variety. It is on the more expensive side, but if you think about how much they're charging for those like 8 shade ones, like $38, I'm like, that's a little high on the price point, you know. But this is one that I definitely recommend. I love Fresca. I just it's another palette that I look at it and it gets me all up in them feels. I love Flora. This is one of the most beautiful, like vibrant pomegranate orangey coral shades. I don't know, I'm probably missing a couple color cones. Celestial, you know, it's just all kinds of beautiful. And if you're looking for a really nice red, pinky, rosy toned palette and you don't want to support Jeffree Star, I feel like this is a good sort of, you know, kind of get the same effect as the Blood Sugar. Then another palette that is newer to my makeup circuit, but one that has definitely left its mark, the Anastasia Beverly Hills Novena Pro Pigment Palette Volume 3. I guess I have a thing for Volume 3 Pro palettes, but y'all can probably tell why I love this, because it's got a lot of green and it's got a lot of orange and red and pink. I mean, this shade right here, just absolute perfection. And I love the fact that this palette has no light setting, blending out shades. It's just all color right up in your face. The matte to shimmer ratio is beautiful. Now for this one being my favorite compared to the other ones, it doesn't have to do with being like this formula is superior. It just has to do with the color story. I would say, you know, pick whichever one you want. But for me, I feel like this one is the most cohesive and it's just so beautiful. I mean, those two, y'all know I love a purple and green moment, and I love an orange and purple moment, and it just so much inspiration looking at this. So much, I mean, that green, these two shades right here, absolute perfection. This is a more powdery formula, but it is just, I feel like when in the insurgence of all the, like, you know, normal makeup on the market, you know, like the neutrals and things in your everyday makeup, Anastasia has really made a good standout colorful staple that people can really get behind and invest in. Because if you're gonna do color, if you're gonna do makeup, period, but if you're gonna do color, you really want to invest in quality, because bright colors can go bad so quickly. It's a train that you want to tread softly on. But I do just absolutely love this. The shimmers provided are gorgeous. The mattes, just everything about this is absolutely gorgeous. All right, let's talk about a wonderful, very sung hero on my channel. A very affordable, wonderful formula. Y'all knew this was coming. From Colourpop. Now, like the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance and Soft Glam, I couldn't just choose one. It had to be between the two, that just neck and neck. I couldn't say, oh, I love that one more than the, no, I love them both. I abuse them equally. But the Just My Luck and the Main Squeeze, two of my absolute favorite color stories, red and green. But here is the Just My Luck. I mean, I'll live for that shimmer right there. I live for Charmed. I mean, I just live for this whole palette. And same with the Main Squeeze one. These are so, for being these monochromatic color stories, because you can have a monochromatic color story, Jeffree Star Bloodlust, and it not be necessarily the best, but these are curated so well. They're just absolutely gorgeously done. A beautiful level of gradation without having too much overlap or any sort of throwaway shades. Like, that's a light shade right there, but you know, it doesn't, you know, look like nothing on the lid. I absolutely love the 3 shimmers in here. I have made a huge dent in red bottoms, partly because it's really powdery, but partly because I also use it a lot. Made a huge dent in Act Natural and Mobamba. I mean, I love these. Like, you know, the palettes I'm including in this are just the ones like tried and true. I reach for above everything else. I mean, if I'm doing red or I'm doing green, I'm reaching for any of these things that I've talked about out of most everything else I have in my collection, which is kind of telling and kind of makes you think that like I need to reevaluate, you know, if I'm not reaching for anything, you know, am I not reaching for it because I'm lazy? Or am I not reaching for it because it's actually not giving me what I want? But I highly recommend these. Love the formula, love the color stories. I mean, so beautiful. Then we are going to end on a sort of, this palette, Alien, Jeffree Star Cosmetics. He is discontinuing this palette, which makes me very sad because this palette, back in the day, I love how I say back in the day like I'm so old. But back in my makeup whatevers, back when I was like basically turning myself into a dead doll or a vampire every other day, your girl did a lot of cool tones just because that's, you know, when you're dead, you're cool toned. And so, you know, I kind of then as I came on in my journey, I was like warm tones, those were, And then he released this palette, which I must admit, this palette has 3 of my absolute favorite green shades in the world. Very obviously the green ones. And I love this green based gold right here. But this palette really helped me delve back into my love of cool tones, because for some reason when I think about cool tones I think like very neutral. I don't think a lot of color, even though blue is cool tone, you got cool tone, but you know, but looking at this one I'm like, oh, but look, I can have like the kind of ready cool tones. I can get a little heated up in here. You know, I can have these shades that are more cool toned and still incorporate the color into them. I mean, Interstellar. You know, and I'm not saying that it took Jeffree Star to be like, well, look at how this palette is formulated for me to, you know, be like, oh, I can have color and cool tone together. It's more that this palette holds a special place in my heart for it kind of reigniting that love and that passion and that desire to use cool tones. And the formula on this is absolutely beautiful. It's the same as Blood Sugar, the same as Blue Blood and all that jazz. You know, the matte, smooth, buttery, pigmented, blendable. The shimmers are the epitome of cha-cha-cha-cha-cha while being all nice and smoothy smooth. You know, but this palette I kind of had to pick. This one I guess is one of my, yes, color story, yes, formula, but also kind of like, I don't want to say emotional, but like because it helped me take another step in my makeup journey, I'm just kind of like, you know, I have to take this, and I know I just love the looks that I come up with this. I hate the packaging. I'm upset that it's being discontinued, but I do absolutely love this palette so much. All right, all y'all, strictly speaking, I did 12 palettes. And I apologize for that. Y'all know that that's something that I tend to do in my top 10 favorite whatevers, but sometimes when it comes to formula, you know, I make excuses. Y'all can whatever roast me down below. But obviously I would love to hear what you have to say about the palettes that I talked about, and also let me know a palette that's something that you know, they couldn't pry away from your cold dead fingers, because we all have different loves and different expectations and different reasoning behind why we love something, which is part of what I love about makeup, is it's so personal and so volatile. You know, the reason I love something and I'm like, yes, you know, may just be something completely different with you. So definitely start all kinds of eyeshadow palette discussions down below. I would love to hear it. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!